and won many strongholds and destroyed the kings of the earth. Go ahead.
And went through to the ends of the earth, and took spoils of many nations, insomuch that the earth was quiet before him.
And it says the earth was quiet before him. Okay? Nobody can touch Alexander the Greek in warfare. Okay? Remember that the Bible states that Isaac gave Esau the power to rule by the sword. That was his blessing. Okay? So when it came to warfare, no one could touch either his father Philip of Macedon, and no one could touch Alexander the Greek. Okay? Go ahead.
Whereupon he was exalted, and his heart was lifted up.
And it says he was exalted, and his heart was lifted up. Like many of the kings of the earth when they gained power and rulership over the earth. Go ahead.
And he gathered a mighty strong host, and ruled over countries and nations and kings, who became tributaries unto him.
So he started ruling over kings who became tributaries. Okay? Which means they had to pay tribute unto Alexander because he ruled them. He had the power over them. Okay? The same way today when America and the Western world, when they go and take down a country, when they go and take down a nation, that nation now becomes tributary to America and the Western world. Therefore, they must accept their way of life. Okay? They must pay tribute to America and the Western world, whether it be finances, whether it be setting up new laws, whether it be going into war with other nations. Okay? These are all the things they must do once they are under the power of American and Western world. The same thing happened in ancient time under the Grecian Empire. Okay? Go ahead.
Verse 5. And after these things he fell sick, and perceived that he should die.
So after these things he fell sick and perceived that he should die. Okay? So Alexander was not killed in warfare or in battle, but instead he was killed by a sickness, by disease. Go ahead.
Verse 6. Wherefore he called his servants, such as were honorable, and had been brought up with him from his youth.
So he started calling together all those who were brought up with him from his youth. Those who were raised with him. Okay, go ahead.
And parted his kingdom among them.
And it says he parted his kingdom among them. Now initially he parted his kingdom among his 4 generals. But eventually after Alexander died, they even started warring amongst each other in order to gain power and rulership. Okay? You had Antiochus Epiphanes trying to war against the Ptolemies. Okay? Antiochus, he came from the lineage of the Seleucids. Okay? Who was another, Seleucid was a general who came up under Alexander the Greek. So even after Alexander died, even though he parted his kingdom, they started warring against each other in order to try to gain power and rulership over each other. Okay, go ahead.
And parted his kingdom among them while he was yet alive. So Alexander reigned 12 years and then died.
So it says he reigned 12 years and then died. Okay. Now the deep thing about this is that Alexander was able to take over all the areas from Greece. He's able to take over all the land from Greece all the way over to India. Okay, in only 12 years. Okay, and if I'm not mistaken, someone correct me if I'm wrong, he died at the early age of about 33, I believe. Okay, so before he was even 40 years old, he was able to take over. Just think about all the land masses between Greece all the way over to India. Okay, you're talking about Greece, you're talking about Europe, which is Asia Minor. Okay, you're talking about parts of Eastern Europe. You're talking about, of course, India, and between that you got the Middle East. You got Persia. You got Mesopotamia. Okay, and with that you got Egypt. Okay, he also took over the Egyptian Empire. Okay, and the Ptolemies were responsible for ruling over that area. Okay, and eventually they took over Syria, which led to the takeover of Israel. Okay, go ahead.
Verse 8, and his servants bare rule, every one in his place.
And everyone bare rule in his place. You had Seleucid who took over Syria. Okay. You had Ptolemy who took over Egypt. Okay. You had Lysimachus who took over parts of Asia Minor. And you had Cassandra who took over Macedonia. Okay. So all of his generals reigned in their stead. Okay, go ahead.
And after his death, they all put crowns upon themselves.
So after his death, they all put crowns upon themselves. Go ahead.
So that their sons after them, many years, and evils were multiplied in the earth.
So it says that even their sons after them should reign. So now the Bible is giving you history. This is actual history that you can find in secular history. Okay? And this is one of the reasons why they had to take the Apocrypha out of the Bible. Okay? If you can go into the Bible and read about historical figures such as Alexander the Greek, Philip of Macedon, Ptolemy, Seleucus, Lysimachus, Cassandra. Okay? You can read about Antiochus Epiphanes, who's another historical figure. Then you would have to start giving validity to the Bible as an historical record, as a historical book. Okay? So it says not only did he set up his 4 generals, but his sons started to reign. Their sons started to reign under them. Now it's going to go into the history of one of those sons, who was Antiochus Epiphanes, who came up under the Seleucid Empire. Okay? Go ahead. And another thing it mentions is that with the Grecian Empire, evils were multiplied in the earth. Now we're taught in secular history that with the Grecian Empire, that became the start of civilization. Okay? We taught that the ancient Grecians are responsible for civilizing the ancient world. But according to the Bible, it states that the ancient Grecians, with their empire, evils were multiplied in the earth. Okay? Go ahead.
Verse 10. And there came out of them a wicked root.
And it says there came out of them a wicked root. Okay? That's the horn that you read about in Daniel's the 8th chapter. The little horn that came out of the rough goat. Okay? That's Antiochus Epiphanes, the wicked root. Go ahead.
Antiochus, surname Epiphanes.
His surname was Epiphanes. Go ahead.
Son of Antiochus the king.
So now, before we go any further, that shows you that the book of Daniel was exact. Daniel was exact in his prophecy. Okay? He spoke about the Grecian Empire as being a rough goat. He said that the first horn that came out of the Grecian Empire would be its first king, which was Alexander the Greek. Then you had the root that came out. You had the little horn who came out of the Grecian Empire, which was Antiochus Epiphanes. So Daniel was right on. He was exact with his prophecy. Grecia is the Grecia is the rough goat. The horn is the first king, which is Alexander the Greek. And then the little horn in Daniel's the 8th chapter, not to be confused with the little horn of Daniel's the 7th chapter, which is America. The little horn of Daniel's the 8th chapter is Antiochus Epiphanes, Okay? Go ahead.
Who had been in hostage at Rome.
It says he was in hostage at Rome. Go ahead.
And he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks.
So 137 years after Alexander the Greek gained control of the earth. Okay? You had Antiochus Epiphanes, who began his reign. Okay? Alexander the Greek ruled around 33 to 30 BC. Okay? Antiochus Epiphanes came about 137 years later, which will mark him around 137 BC, 139, 137 BC. Okay? Go ahead.
In those days went there out of Israel wicked men, who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen.
Now it's going to start going into the abomination of desolation, how it was set up. Okay? It's going to start going into how this was set up. Read that again.
Verse 11. In those days went there out of Israel wicked men.
So it says, in those days went out of Israel wicked men. So you had wicked men who were coming from the nation of Israel. Doing what?
Who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen.
So these wicked men who proceeded forth from the nation of Israel made a covenant, and they persuaded many people of Israel to make a covenant with the heathen. Okay, or the heathen, Okay, sounds familiar, doesn't it? Okay, when you look in our time, you have those under the boule who have made a covenant with the heathen. Okay, to sell off the nation of Israel to the heathen or to the nations. Okay, go ahead.
That are round about us. For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow.
So they started trying to convince the people that ever since they started departing and separating themselves from the nations, we started becoming sorrowful. This is what these wicked men were claiming. Okay? We as a nation became sorrowful when we separated ourselves from the other nations. Therefore, let's make a covenant to now join ourselves with the nations and make a covenant with the heathen. Go ahead.
Verse 12. So this device pleased them well.
So it says, this device pleased them well. Okay? The people who wanted to follow after the ways of the Greeks and the other nations, this pleased them well. This was like music to their ears. Okay? And the book tells you this. It tells you this in the Bible. The book of Isaiah, I believe is the 30th chapter, either the 29th or the 30th chapter, where it says that the people say that prophesy unto us smooth things. Don't prophesy unto us right things, prophesy unto us smooth things. Okay? Turn you out of the way. Okay? Cause the Holy One of Israel to depart from us or to flee from us. Okay? So you had people who were like that during this time. Even during this time, you had our people who were pleased. They were happy to hear that they no longer had to follow the law, but now they can start joining in with the practices of the Gentiles. Okay? And believe it or not, this is one step that it takes in order to build the abomination of desolation. You need people of our nation. You only need a few. Okay? You need a few people of our nation who are willing to sell out the nation as a whole over to the ways and the customs of the other nations. Okay? Today you got the Boule, you got Jesse Jackson, you got Al Sharpton. Numerous people who are willing to sell us out. You got the pastors and the preachers, the T.D. Jakes, the Creflo Dollars. Okay, Pastor Kearney Thomases. Okay, all these people who are willing to sell us out in an agreement with the Gentiles in order to receive financial gain. Okay, go ahead.
So this device pleased them well. Then certain of the people were so forward herein that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinance of the heathen. So it
says you had some people who were so wicked, so vile, and so unruly that they went to the kings to get licenses to do and follow the practices of the Gentiles. Okay? They started asking for licenses to start following after the practices of the Greeks. Okay? And what we're reading about is the history of Hellenization. Okay? The Hellenization of the Jews. Along with the empire of Alexander the Greek and his 4 generals, you had something which was called Hellenization. You had the Middle East, which was Hellenized. You had all the areas, Egypt, which was Hellenized. You had Israel, which was Hellenized. Okay? Which means they were forced to adopt the practices and the customs of the Grecians. Okay? Go ahead.
Verse 14. Whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem.
So it says they built a place of exercise in Jerusalem. Okay? This is where you get the gymnasium from. Okay, it tells you that in the book of Josephus. And in this gymnasium, they would perform sports and they would perform acts in the nude. Okay? And this is why today in the Olympics and a lot of these sports, you notice that the uniforms that they wear are it's like little to no clothing. Okay? When you watch the Olympics, you got the small little shorts. Okay, with the little tank top. Okay, you watch the NFL, you got the tight pants with the tight jersey. Okay? All of these things transpire from what happened during the Grecian Empire, in which our people were performing in the nude. Okay? Go ahead.
Whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem according to the customs of the heathen, and made themselves uncircumcised and forsook the holy covenant.
And it says they made themselves uncircumcised and forsook the holy covenant. Okay? So in other words, you got people who are selling out to go get licensed to be a part of the Grecian kingdom and the Grecian society. Okay? And believe it or not, that happens today and it's going to continue to happen as times get worse. Okay? You're going to have people clamoring in lines to get the mark of the beast, to get licensed to be able to operate in this modern day society. Okay? That's the same thing that was happening back then during the Grecian Empire. Okay? Go ahead.
And joined themselves to the heathen and were sold to do mischief.
And it says they were sold to do mischief. Okay? Go ahead.
Now when the kingdom was established before Antiochus, he thought to reign over Egypt.
So it says he thought to reign over Egypt.